How I started, it was literally picking up that phone and making calls. I'm making like 500-600 calls a month. One guy in Timmins, he owns a couple restaurants. He's like, oh yeah, I know a contractor. He's looking for work. Perfect. Now he's my handyman. I'm talking to the handyman. He's like, oh yeah, like I have a painter who's really good. Now I have a painter. My realtor knows some people as well. And before you know it, I have this network of 400 or 500 people that I can just pick from and, set up my team perfectly.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Property Hustler Show. My name is Andrew and today Peng and I are joined by a very special guest, Isaiah Henry, who is a real estate investor. He works as a first responder and he is also moving into joint venture partnerships, acquiring assets in various places around Ontario, and he specializes in being able to manage properties remotely, which Isaiah is very impressive. So I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Thanks guys. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
The point of managing properties from a distance, being able to invest in properties that you can't see and still have some kind of control over, I think is actually hugely important. And the fact that you're able to do that, I think is a huge bridging point that a lot of people can't seem to overcome. Because, think about it, everybody from Toronto, they want to invest in markets they're familiar with.
Yeah.
They're not familiar with, Sudbury, or they're not Sault Ste. Marie even, people who will buy places like there. But there's some properties there that look great on paper. Like the numbers just seem to make sense, but people's questions like, how am I going to take care of it? Right? But you've obviously figured out a way. So why don't we start off with that?
Just a quick backtrack there. So when I started real estate investing, again, I'm not going to be one. I jumped Northern Ontario, didn't do anything. Like I did a lot of stuff in Southern Ontario first, kind of built my skills, my team, and my investment philosophy before I took it up north. But the thing I was finding, every time I went to a property, I was just getting in the way. I didn't have very good construction knowledge. My mortgage knowledge was lacking. I was good at the whole system, but every time I physically went to the property, I just muddied the waters. So being able to remove yourself from the property and still being able to execute, I was like, aha, there's something here. So when I went up north, Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, Timmins, I'm mostly in Timmins right now. Me not being there has no impact on the deal as well. All I have to do is put the systems and build those relationships up there to make sure the investment is successful. Who cares if the furnace goes out? Me being there is not going to help it. I'm not going to get the new furnace there faster. I'm not going to get the contractor to do more work better. I'm probably just going to make them more mad or, get them angry because I'm meddling in everything. So being able to put those systems in, whether it's renovations, property acquisition, tenant management, it's all about systems. And once those are in place, man, you can take that anywhere you want to go.
Why those cities?
It's funny you say that. So I lived in Sudbury for 6 months working, I think it was a Ministry of Health at this time. I was doing some training for the government. And, there was someone I knew who was from Timmins. You started asking about it, did a quick realtor search. And I remember I saw that first single family home for $85,000 and it was fully renovated. I'm like, no, this has to be a mistake. So I did some more deep diving into Timmins, what was supporting that market in terms of economic drivers, the future for Timmins. I'm like, wow, this makes sense. And at the end of the day, I didn't have a lot of money. I wasn't like these Toronto investors. I could put, $200-300 down on a property. I was working, just starting my career as a police officer there. So I had a little bit of money and cadet salary is not amazing, but I was able to take that and say, what can I do with this? And saw the opportunity up in Timmins and said, hey, we got to jump in here and see what we can make happen.
Because obviously you have colleagues who you would talk about what it is you're doing a little bit, right? Did they ever say to you, oh man, why would you invest? That's too far away. Why would you?
I think it's easier for me to counter the people who supported me versus the people who didn't. Everyone was like, this is a bad idea. This is what are you doing? How are you going to get there? What happens if something goes wrong? I'm like, what happens if there's a fire? And I'm like, well, they're going to call the fire department.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest breaking point. And I'm like, literally tell me all your objections and I'll tell you how I solve them. If the property burns down, fire department, insurance. If there's a pipe, I have good property managers, good contractors. They're going to go fix it anyway. And everything's electronic. You can pay people electronic. Oh, what are you going to do with tenants? Well, there's property managers. I have assistants down there. They're going to place the tenants for me, and then I can vet them on the back end. Being able to put those systems in really has helped. And again, I think there is some level of, trust that I put in the system, and maybe I'm less averse to risk than some people, but I just saw the opportunity. I understand my investment philosophy and strategy, and it's there's no way that my work ethic can't make this work.
So this system is really being backed in by the people, the local contractor, the local power team. How do you actually go about building that kind of connection?
I feel I am the least important cog in the wheel in this system. So how I started, it was literally picking up that phone and making calls. If you look back at some of my call logs, I'm making 500-600 calls a month. And not necessarily calls, because some people you got to get on a call. You have to be very intentional about what you're doing. I was just picking up the phone for anyone in Timmins. I was calling burger shops. I was calling laundromats, dry cleaners, anyone whose number who I could get and just get my name out there. And again, I was still making contacts with like real estate professionals, but everyone in the city started knowing who I am. Like, I remember there's this one guy in Timmins, he owns a couple restaurants, and I was connecting with him. He's like, oh yeah, I know a contractor. He's looking for work. Perfect. Now he's my handyman. I'm talking to the handyman a couple times. He's like, oh yeah, like I have a painter who's really good. Now I have a painter. My realtor knows some people as well. And before you know it, I have this network of 400 or 500 people that I can just pick from and, set up my team perfectly. And from there, that's how I set it up. Home inspector, property managers, assistants, realtors. I got the whole system set up and then backups for each position, because that's important too. Because if you put all your faith in one person and they go on vacation, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But having backups and really nurturing those relationships. The amount of virtual Tim cards that I've sent up to Timmins is crazy. And not like in a way to buy them off, but just show that like you really appreciate their value. Like they're helping managing one of like the biggest assets you own. If you can't show appreciation to them or show how thankful you are that they're engaged in the work that you're doing, like it's not going to go. But at that same time, I've even had one of my properties assistants. She's like, I love working for you. Like, I just want to do this for free. Like, I love the way your system is. And she's so happy. And I feel like that's the kind of relationships you start building. She's telling her friends about it. Her friends like, oh, when can I get involved? So just growing that relationships and systems up there. It's been really good, and I'm really excited for the future.
You are making that sound so easy, right? I mean, I don't think a lot of it, actually, if I had to boil it down, it sounds like, there's you don't have that fear factor that a lot of people will have. Like, even just simply picking up the phone, calling, what did you say, at Burger King? Yeah. I mean, technically speaking, I think if I was on the receiving end of that, I would think maybe this is a little bit weird.
Yeah,
but
sure.
that I would quickly get over it, because, I mean, it doesn't bother you calling for a contact, and I have a contact. There's no sweat off my back. Yeah, sure. You want, you're asking me, you're not asking me for money. Yeah. You're just asking me for a contact.
I'm very value driven in these conversations. So even when I was talking with like the burger guys, they have a tortilla place, they have this lumber yard. I'm always saying, hey, like at the end of the call or somewhere, like where can I add value to this business? And I said, for this burger guy in particular, I was like, hey, like I have like, rental units. The tenants will have, I like to set up like welcome baskets when the tenants come in. Would you mind if I could use or if you sent me a couple coupons, I could put them in the welcome basket so they'd be able to come to your restaurant. He's like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And now every time I get a new tenant, I call him up, said, hey, got a new tenant. He's like, oh, no problem. Let me get you the coupons. Sends me some coupons over email again, because we're virtual. Sends me them. I print them out over Staples, which is, I go on Staples, whatever, print them out. My property assistant picks them up. Boom, puts them in the basket, and now we've created another relationship.
You're like a master of the delegation.
Telling you, yeah,
or coordination.
Don't do anything yourself. Like people think I'm lazy. I'm like, no, I'm not lazy. But doing things yourself is such a tough way to scale. And the more people you get involved, I feel like the more leverage you have on your business and the more uplift you have, because you have so many people working. You can focus on like the big global picture where a lot of people are happy doing the task. Like my assistant, she loves showing property. She loves getting those calls. Like, she's the boss of her own system. My contractors love what they're doing because, they're doing straight renovations. They're not dealing with the financing. They're not dealing with like, any, jibber jabber back and forth. Everyone's doing their job the way they like it. And I'm just overseeing the system, making sure if there's any leaks, doing my best to put a system to kind of patch the holes.
Have you done any acquisition or any project management remotely as well? Or this is all just the property management side?
Yeah, we do acquisition, like everything. Like even in Timmins, like we don't go up. The only reason I go up to Timmins is to network. I don't go actually to see the properties ever. If I'm going to Timmins, it's literally to do as much networking in those couple days that I'm up there. So even for the acquisition process, it's very simple. I have 2 realtors that I work with closely up there, but I know most of the realtors in Timmins will do virtual walkthroughs, video and picture, upload that stuff to YouTube. I can see it. They send me the files. I can really review it. Home inspector goes in. They get a set of pictures as well. Property assistant goes in. So I've had 5 sets of eyes on this, maybe even a contractor. So 5 or 6 sets of eyes on this. I've seen the property at so many different angles, at so many different vantage points. I know the property pretty well. There's no difference from me actually going there and touching the wall. Like there's no difference me doing that. So being able to do that, have that system, I have all the data in front of us. Now it's just doing analysis, and that's what I'm good at. And I can do that in my office chair. So I'm doing my analysis. We come up with a max allowable offer. We send it out, and before you know it, we're acquiring units.
Right. So it's very interesting that you mentioned about like home inspector. That also tells me that you're doing the acquisition always with a bit of a condition.
You know what? I wish I was one of those guys. I could just be, yep, sight on scene, boom, pick it up, cash offer. I wish I was that guy. But that's just not really how my business model works. And that's not a position I'm ready to put my investment partners in. So I love doing the home inspection. I have a great relationship with the home inspector that I work with. Not only does she actually do the inspection, but we have like a really intentional conversation after We pick apart every aspect of that home inspection. And if I don't know what it is, I'll call one of my contractors and be like, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? They explain it to me, and then I'll go back to my home inspector to make sure I really understand the property. So either I take it down myself or I bring it to an investment partner and we move forward on it.
Everything you're illustrating right now really paints a picture of how oiled the machine is, right? It seems like you've really put a lot of things in place. But I'm curious to know a little bit about how you got to that point. So I want to back up just to map it out a little bit, because a lot of people want to do exactly what you're saying. That is the ideal, to be able to manage properties remotely, to be able to have people in place in order to execute what it is that you need executed, and to be able to trust them. But there's probably some scrapes and bruises that you had to experience while getting there. I want to ask, where was the first place you bought your first investment property?
First one was a condo in Toronto. That was it was a new build, pre-built, so I didn't really have to do anything in that, and that was easy. I would say the first one where I actually thought of myself as a real estate investor would have been, it was a condo townhouse in Oshawa. And that was very easy as well. I think I just fell into a good situation, was able to pick that one up. A tenant was knocking on the door, ready to do it. The vacancy was so low in Oshawa at that point. Tenants were just dying to get in. I closed the next day. The tenant was already in there, and he's still in there today, which is great.
How long ago was that?
2019 is when I picked that one up.
2019, okay.
Yeah, but the first time that I really started this long distance management is when I picked up a deal in Windsor. It was off market through a colleague. There were some tenant issues, getting them out, cash for keys situation. But at that point is when I started learning and getting my bumps and bruises from long distance investing. Quick story here. So I did exactly what all the podcasts said. You buy it long distance, you get a property manager, and you wipe your hands, and that's it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy.
That's so high level.
Yeah, so high level. I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone could do this. And then I started learning that nobody cares about your property the way that you do. So I'm paying this property manager 10% a month, and they're doing nothing. There was an earwig issue. There was some bugs, and the building was just known for that. They usually spray in April, but it was happening in March. So I said, hey, we need to get this. My tenants can't have bugs in the house. And she's like, okay, I'll make some calls. Days go by, no calls. And then I'm sitting on the phone making calls about this bug infestation while still paying this property manager 10% a month. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why am I paying you for all this? And every time there was a tenant issue, they were calling me. So I was like, man, if I'm paying you $10 10% a month, there's got to be some value added there. And I wasn't getting it. So we parted ways. And that's the point where I started implementing systems. Any issue that I had, I was like, okay, that was an issue, solved it. What system can I put in place so I don't have to deal with this again? And that's how the system started coming into fruition.
In the olden days when you would make the phone call and they would unplug something, plug it into the other. What are those people called?
The operator kind of
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I always hate it when you hire somebody supposedly to do a job and they kind of act like one of those operators. A problem comes in, it's like, okay, let me put you through to, is it here? It's like, why? I don't need that, right?
Yeah, I can do that.
I could have an IVR, right?
Yeah.
To do something like that. I don't need you to do something.
Especially at the price that I was paying, especially on a single family, the cash flow was killing it. And man, there's no value here. We got to find a better system.
We always tell people that when we try to teach anybody any of these are the fundamentals of how to do property management, how to manage those, is not necessarily so that you can manage it forever yourself. But if you know what's involved, it prevents you from getting hosed, right? It prevents you from being taken advantage of and somebody saying, oh, no, this is just industry standards and you wouldn't know any better. Because they don't actually talk about this part at real estate seminars or in podcasts, because this is the ugly truth around real estate investing. People want to sell that. It's easy, high level, go vacation in the Bahamas, and you can just answer your phone calls, right? It's like, no, you have to put in the work to set these things up. And you're a systems guy.
Yes, big time.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle in managing properties remotely? What is it? Is it people? Is it, the tenants? Is it what is it?
It's never been the tenants. I feel there's always bad tenants, but only the bad tenants get highlighted. There's never you don't get an award for being a good tenant, but you definitely get brought into the fold if you're a bad tenant. There's amazing people, and maybe I just, have better faith in humanity than most people. I screen my tenants well. There's a process that we go through for screening. And if you meet that process and you pass all the things, you have 100% trust. I give you all the trust because you've earned that through the tenant screening process. The area where I feel is the most difficult is to find educated, qualified people who are bought in, ready to work for you. Sorry, not for you, with you on your project. Because a lot of times you get these people who's like, oh, I can do that job, but they're wishy-washy. They're not actually down for it. And it's a unique set of people that you want because you can't hire an entrepreneur, which is tough because, all of ourselves, we are entrepreneurs. So you want someone with that drive, but it doesn't work because you need them to do a specific task and think about only that task. Where as an entrepreneur, your skill sets are a little bit more global. Like you think about things on a higher level. If I hire you to do like to write up the lease, I need your attention to detail to be on that lease. The postal code has to be right. Don't put my name on the lease. We got to put like, the corporation name on the lease. Little things that I can't review all the time. But if I hire you for that, it actually needs to be done there. So it was really just going through people, vetting them and making sure they're willing, one, and then actually able to do those individual tasks that really feed the bigger machine.
So you didn't hire people necessarily to tap into their process and infrastructure. You laid out your expectations and then let them plug into your systems. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes to like being remote. When you pull someone else's systems, they're going to run them exactly how they run them. But if it's my systems, I've set it up, I've taken the time to kind of review and refine it. That's what I'm doing. Like people think I'm just sitting in my office, like watching realtor reels on YouTube and stuff. Most of my time is just setting up systems so I can easily give them to my assistants, because that's another thing. I don't want to work for this guy and then have to do so much work. Like he has nothing. He's like, oh, I need you to rent this unit. And you're like, what do you want me to do? He's like, just figure it out. That's not a good. Like when I'm saying, hey, we need to rent this unit out, I have steps and videos all the way down. All you need to do is click on the video, read the PDF, and it's like stupid simple. And they love that because, man, all I got to do is do what he says. Like I don't got to think about anything. That's the time I think as an investor where I put a lot of the effort is in making those systems, making those videos. They can go back to the video at any time. They can review the PDF. And let's say they get sick or they no longer want to do the job. Boom, I still have those documents and files. We can just move to someone else and say, hey, this is a system. It's worked. You can even talk to the old person about it, but here's a system that works. And we're able to kind of build off that.
I think you've already built a business.
I know. What's your turnover time with your sort of like staff or your power team? Because again, I'm sure you come across with someone who overpromise you that they can do certain things, and then when the situation happens, they go there, they didn't do a great job or whatever. How do you actually vet the whole process?
Always start them off with like little tasks. I never give them the keys to the kingdom right off the hop. Like you got to earn that opportunity to get the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. So I remember when I was vetting one of my first assistants, like easy stuff. Hey, can you go to the property and just take a picture of the mailbox? I need to see if there's any mail in there. I don't actually care about that picture, but I need to see, okay, one, how are they communicating with me when I ask them to do the task? Two, are they respectful to the tenants when they interact with them? Three, can you take a picture and send it to me over like email or whatever? Like, can you figure out these small tasks? Yes, it's going to cost you an hour or whatever you're going to pay them. But learning that now on a very small, very low risk task is way better than saying, hey, I need you to go in and do this high value, high risk task. And they just completely mess it up, which really hurts your business. So I just slowly build them off for that. Okay, great. You've taken a picture. And, can you knock on the tenant's door and just give them the Tim's card and say, thanks for being great tenants. Boom. See how they do on that. Hey, can I get you to take a exterior walkthrough? I just want to make sure the landscaping's in good order. They can do that. And then you just keep growing with that. And at that point, it also lets them know, hey, do I want to continue working with this guy? Or is it a little bit too much? Because again, it's a very specific person you're looking for. You can't just hire anyone. They have to be willing to do this extra work for you. And you have to be willing to, provide that value to them as well. So I've been through a couple people. I probably went through 10 or 12 different assistants before I found the three that I really rock with in Timmins right now.
How long did it take you to go through all those people to get the person you need?
Top two are going to be the two females. And then I have one male who does a little bit of stuff. But he's got another job where the two females are a little bit more free to do this kind of work. Yeah, I would say about, 6 or 7 months.
6 or 7 months.
After letting go of my property manager I had in Timmins and really just doubling down on like internalizing it all. About 6 or 7 months to get the 3 people.
12 people to go through. That's hiring really fast, firing extremely fast.
Yes, and that's what I was told. Like, I'm just like hire slow and fire like really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not going to give you the kind of output, that's the relationship. I pay you to do a job. You want to do the job. And if that's not working, you got to go. I got to find someone else.
So it seems to me like the primary thing that you look for is fundamentally technology, which has to do with the tools that you're already using. So it doesn't really matter if it's people that you're working with over there. Even I'm assuming people who are in construction too, you also need them to be able to use the technology you're using, right?
It's funny you say that because I thought so. But in Timmins, it's like a really blue collar stuff, just for name's sake. Like, we'll call them Tony, Mike, and Adam. So those are the contractors I use. They're still writing their invoices in pen. They're doing everything here. But we've made such good relationships with them through our assistants that it's not a problem. If they want to get paid in cash, no big deal. We e-transfer our assistants the cash. assistants bring the cash right to the contractor. Payment's happy as well. Obviously, we'll throw in a Tim card or maybe a pack of 2-4. They love their beer up there.
Are you sponsored by Tim's?
No, I know, right? I feel like Tim's just brings people together. Like nobody's
yeah.
mad. It's like, hey, you want to go like get a Tim's? Like it's fine. I think a case of beer and a Tim's card go a long way, especially with them up there. And they have no problem because like a lot of their apprehension to working with people down south is getting taken advantage of. But, now I have people who live in Timmins who are entrenched in the community up there working with me. So they have no problem doing business with me. I remember Tony was all skeptical about working with me. I said, no problem. Don't worry. My girl will come see you. He'll bring you the cash. I didn't tell him he's going to get a Tim card. He gets a Tim card. He calls me. He's like, oh, Isaiah, you're amazing. That was awesome. He's like, when's our next project? Yeah, little things. Little things.
The contractor thing is a challenge for a lot of people. And even for us when we were first starting out, the contractor aspect was a challenge. Because one of the things I realized is that good contractors, people who know how to do maintenance and people who are skilled, they're often going to be old school guys.
Yeah.
I don't find a lot of younger people who are in the trades who are good these days. They're far and few in between,
yes.
right? So it's hard. So the combination of finding somebody who is good at the work and can also use technology and take pictures is ideal, but so hard to find. So it's not that you were rigid about your systems. You made a workaround with your systems, right?
Exactly.
You can create your system, but if people can't plug into it, you have to choose the path of least resistance.
Again, like you don't want to stress your contractor out. Like Tony's not taking a picture. My guy has a Nokia flip phone. Do not ask him to take a picture. He just like that's going to stress him out so much more, but he does great work. Yeah. So how can I, still get Tony invested in my projects, willing to do work for me, but not give him any issues? Boom, we call the assistant. It's an hourly charge to get her to do some photos for me. So yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Creating a business, creating a system. I think the main thing here is that your systems should make it easier for people to work, not harder.
What kind of software do you use to manage your properties? Because I assume that there's going to be a lease ledger that you need to keep track of. There's going to be a receipt that you might need to be writing. There might be some like documents that you need to sign.
I just write everything down in a notebook and then hope it's all good at tax time. And I'm joking. Yeah, I'm huge system guys, and technology literally has made this so easier. I don't think you could do what I do now 10 years ago. Just technology's not there. In terms of property management, I use Stessa. They refuse to give me an affiliate link, so I'm not going to give them anything there, but that's fine. But Stessa is really good, and I tell everyone, just use it. It's free. There's so many great tools. It gives you reports. You can look at your cash flow. It connects right to your bank account. I've had no issues. You can scale this up. I think it'll give you 500 properties for free. There's no issue. You can embed your receipts in the system. So let's say something comes in, Tony comes, got to do a $50 repair, and he gives me the receipt. You can just upload the receipt right to it. So then at accounting time, I just download the whole file, give it to my accountant. He's not looking for receipts. He can see everything matches up, and he loves it because now I've made my accountant's job easier because all he has to do is get the printout and make sure all the books reconcile. So that's what I use for the property management. In terms of file management, I'm all Google Drive. It's making it so easy. You can share any file with anyone, limit their access to viewer, editor if they actually want them to work on stuff. It's just making the system so easy. And then another thing I've been doing a lot, and you guys do it a lot as well, is Google Calendar. That's a really powerful app that I don't think a lot of people are using to its full potential. For example, I got a home inspection going on right now while I'm here. All I did, I've sent the calendar invite to the home inspector, added her email. All the information about the home inspection is right in that calendar invite. So she doesn't have to open a separate email. She doesn't have to go find it. Everything's right there. The address is there. When she sits in her car, boom, hit the address button, she's gone. And that makes things so much easier for me and everybody else involved. So big fan of the Google Suite, big fan of Stessa, and then finally Slack. That's what I use to communicate with all my team members. So whether it's my co-op student, my VA, my contractors get on it if we're doing a project together. And it's just an easy way to keep all our conversations, any documents in order. And then if anything I want to pull out there, I can just move it over to Google Drive. But instead of random text messages, emails, you're like, wait, when did he say this? Or it's all in Slack. It's nice and easy. So those are the three big technologies I use.
So tenant request, how do they come in?
Yeah, how do tenants talk to you?
So each property has its own email. And again,
yeah,
so all I do, I set up a Gmail account for them, nice and easy. I forward that Gmail account to my main account because I'm not opening 17 different email addresses. For sure. So it's forwarded to my main business account. So it comes in, but I can see where it's forwarded from. Like, oh, this is from property A. Perfect. Deal with property A. If it's something that I need to deal with directly, I'll answer it. If not, forward it on to property assistant and say, hey, there's this issue. Let me know when it's taken care of. And then they just outsource it from there. But at the beginning, you need to set these expectations with your tenant so they understand how you do things. Because if a tenant calls me, I will not pick up. And they know that. Do not call me. There's no reason for you to call me. You have my number because legally it has to be on the lease, but do not call me. You're going to send me an email. I check my emails every day. I work nights, so I will be awake. And if there's an issue that needs to be done immediately, I'll make sure I get it to you. And if it can be done during business hours, I'll make sure to take care of it then.
Do people know that you're the owner?
Oh, no, never. I always assume the role of asset manager, which just gives me a little bit of buffer because sometimes I throw Isaiah under the bus. Like I'm talking with a tenant and I remember one tenant's like, oh, I want to put a fence up in the backyard. And I'm like, you know what? The owner he won't allow that. Like, to be honest, I would love to make a fence, but he's a stickler, the owner. Man, I'll try and talking to him, but probably not. And they're like, okay, no problem. Yeah, I don't want to stress you out, Isaiah. Yeah, that owner guy.
You're just doing your job.
Yeah, just do your job, right? So it's crazy. I was just that the owner is the problem. It's never me. It's always the owner. And this isn't I don't use it to be like facetious or like to lie to them, but it just protects you from your role with the tenant. There's no reason that you need to be the landlord. You're just asking for a little bit more problems, in my opinion.
I really love what you're saying. And this is the whole thing where I say it often on the podcast, which is game recognizes game, right? There's some things that are just good practices. And it's interesting when people land on the same results, like the separation of the email addresses. Do you give them your personal phone number or do you have an IVR, a business line?
It's my business line, but it's like my business line.
Yeah.
Not my like personal number.
Because some things that are just good landlord practices, right? Which is, introduce yourself as a property manager if possible, right? Separate the email addresses. Don't give them your personal one, ideally, and make it like, 123 Bloor Street or whatever it is. Also, making sure to set the expectation and train the relationships in the technology, right? Because people have a tendency to call for anything, anytime, right? Or text, right? And if you encourage them or train the relationships for them to email in, this is what I think allows you to scale because it frees up your time. You can work, you can systemize things, and you can only handle true emergencies when they happen, right? And there's very few things that are ever true emergencies.
Final step in one of my pre-screening is like a video call. And the question I ask, what do you define as a true emergency where you need to call me? And they usually give me some emergencies and I usually tell them, no, it's not a true emergency. This is why. This is how it will be handled.
That's part of your tenant screening tool?
Oh, yeah. Like, because you want to know, like, how, because I even asked them, like, hey, if you can't pay rent, what are you going to do? Like, let's get this stuff up front. Like, we're going to be in a relationship for a while. Like, what are your plans? Oh, like, if I can't pay rent, you're not going to get paid. I'm like, okay, well, you're probably not going to be a tenant here. But if they say, hey, if I can't pay rent, I'd probably let you know this, and this, or, have a plan. And then I would tell them what I would do. And they can just get all this out up front. And I feel like we have a way better relationship. Most of my tenants, I feel like they don't get nervous when they see my business number come up. They're like, oh, okay, he probably wants to just talk. So it's good there.
You're really having that kind of ugly conversation up front, right? Because you don't want to get into a relationship and when things go wrong, and this is when you're like, okay, here's what we need to do. And the trust is not there, right? People wouldn't be willing to listen at that point.
At that point, you own nothing to that tenant. They're a potential tenant. You're screening them. So you ask all the hard questions there because as soon as they sign that lease and send that deposit, you guys are bound. And we all know the landlord-tenant is not very forgiving to us landlords. So I'm just going to do my due diligence as best I can on the front end to make sure whoever's coming into the properties are going to be a good fit.
There's a lot of things that you've described doing, which I got to say is straight up brave. People are naysayers. People are doubtful. But I think if I told somebody to do something like that, they would say, well, are you really allowed to screen based off of that? It's like you can screen for a whole wide variety of things. People are very formal about their application process, not necessarily taking into consideration social cues, character cues. Yep. Like, do we get along as people? That can be a measurement for you in your relationship with your tenant because you're going to deal with them. It might be important for you to like them.
Yes.
Right?
Big time.
You guys have to vibe. This is a good time to bridge into the investment portion of things because a lot of people talk about if you want to be a real estate investor or if you want to be a landlord, in order to excel as a real estate investor, you cannot be tied up landlording. You seem to have a good balance of it because you systemize things to a point where you can afford to still scale your investment. Where are you in your real estate investment process right now? What are the next steps for Isaiah as far as investing goes?
Right now, the portfolio, there's 5 doors in the portfolio, but we're scaling quick. Even at this point now, we have an off-market duplex under contract, and we just signed an 8-unit property in Timmins as well. So things are coming, hot and heavy there. We're interviewing a couple potential joint venture partners as well. In terms of the actual business, I love having a little bit of mix between joint ventures as well as personally owned properties. Gives you the flexibility to qualify and control a little bit of your own investments while still welcoming people to work with you. At the end of the day, for 2023, my goal is to add 10 joint venture partners that we're able to build a business together up in Timmins. That doesn't mean I won't buy anything myself, but I just love the fact that you can work with people, show them this is like a really, really good way to build wealth for yourself and your family. And I want to be a part of that, as well as, building wealth for my family as well there. And the thing that I really thought about, because some people are anti-JV. They're like, I do not want to do JVs. I get that, but I love people. My biggest thing is like, I'm a cottage guy. I want to be at the cottage, not by myself, I want the whole squad there. Like I want everyone to like come up with me, because if you've done all this work and you have this big business and you're a real estate mogul, but you're the only one, that's not it. That's not what you want to be. I want everybody. Everybody rolls up to the cottage. Everybody's got the nice whip. Everyone's like, living the life they want to live because we all came up together. So yeah, that's why I'm super excited and motivated for those 10 people for 2023. Because I'm telling you, my birthday next year it's gonna be a movie.
It's gonna be a movie.
It's gonna be a movie. Yeah.
This is so important, I think, and people don't take advantage of it, especially I think now with the pandemic and everything. People became very, very closed off. I feel like people relying on each other, even socializing and all these things really declined, and I feel some people don't know how to even approach partnerships in some cases, right? But it's really hugely advantageous. And today, especially with all the instability, right? Everything, all the fluctuations that are happening, JV is a very comfortable vessel to use to get into real estate or to scale up. You still want the pie. It might be harder to get, but at least you have a piece of it, even in a JV, as opposed to having none of it.
You can have maybe the whole grape, and maybe you don't qualify for the grape till maybe next year. Or you can have a slice of a watermelon now and also have the support of everyone else who has a slice of that watermelon as well. I'm not saying I like watermelons over grapes. It is what it is. But I'm always more interested in, sharing that opportunity with someone else who's looking to grow in the same direction than having that full grape and saying, look at me. I have all this to myself. Everyone's like, okay, like that's cool. But I just love that community aspect, building together.
Isaiah, how do you structure your joint venture agreement?
So that answer is fluid. I feel some people are like very strict. It's 50-50. You bring all the money. I do the active, nothing else. I like that. And I feel like that's a great starting point to like educate investors or potential investors. Hey, this is what it would look like as a 50-50 if you're bringing the mortgage, renovations, and down payment, and I'll bring my skills as an active partner. Great place to start, but that doesn't work for everyone. Some people don't have the full funds to do renovation, down payment, and closing, but they still want to be involved. If I meet an investor or a potential investor approaches me and they say, hey, Isaiah, I want to work with you. These are the resources at my disposal. I'm happy enough that they're down to work with me. Those are the people. I don't want like anyone pushing their way into a deal with me. If they show that commitment that they're down to work with me, we will find a way to make it work. Maybe they're just covering the renovations and we're doing it on a promissory note and they're just getting paid interest, something like that. Or maybe they only have half the down payment and instead of a 50-50, maybe it's 75-25. Or some sort of structure. My first thing with a joint venture partner is, do we want to work together? That's like my biggest question, and that's 80% of my question. After that, the split and everything, we can figure that out after. So 50-50 is like where I like to start. But as long as someone shows that commitment and they're down to work with me, my projects in this business, we'll definitely find a way to make it work.
Okay, so if it's 50-50 or let's say 60-40, depending on the size of the deal or depending on the situation, is the investor going to recoup all the investment before you start getting the profit, or how does that work?
How I like to set up my deals is any money that they invest always comes before me. If you put enough trust in me and my business that you're going to invest with me, I got to make sure you're getting your cash out first. So any refinances or sales of the property, you would recoup your investment. And then after your full investment is recouped, we would then split any gains on the sale of the property or any refinances. In terms of the cash flow is usually tied to the equity split. So if it's 50-50 in the property, we split the cash flow 50-50, but leaving that refinance and proceeds for the investor there. The reason I like 50-50 is it just, everyone gets paid every month because I feel like that's always nice. I like the jingle in my jeans at the end of the month. That's what I'm looking for there. And I feel it shows the investor, hey, we're in this together. Because at the same time, we also split the expenses because it's not like, hey, this is your deal. I just manage it when it's good. If it goes bad, you better come up with the cash. That's not it at all. So, bad things happen or renovations or repairs happen, we're still going to split those in accordance with whatever split that we have. So if the 50-50, 60-40, we're going to split it as well.
So if there's any cash call where you guys need to inject the capital, then you're going to bring the 50% of that as well.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, that's really good.
How do you prefer to structure the titles of the property? So let's say, we're going to do a JV together. The traditional one would be we both go on title, right? And we're both qualifying for mortgage. Do you bring partnerships in where one person qualifies for the mortgage, let's say, or do you also qualify for the mortgage? Or what is it that you look for when you're bringing people into the JV?
So this, again, goes back to the flexibility piece. So the thing I like about Timmins is the price points aren't as aggressive as Southern Ontario. So qualification is usually less of an issue up in Timmins. Again, once we get into bigger deals, the qualification gets more intense. But anything from like a single to a 4, you're probably going to be under 500,000, which is usually the investors I try and target. So qualification has not been a problem at that point. But even if it is, I still have a little bit of qualification room, or my mortgage guys do some crazy stuff that keep letting me qualify, legal stuff, but good stuff with the portfolio. So that's never been a problem. So I like to start it at 50-50 if they cover everything. But if they're not able to do the mortgage, but maybe they're able to bring all the down payment renovations and cover the reserves, maybe that's how we get back to 50-50. So again, it's always malleable. I would prefer if they bring the mortgage just to, have their skin in the game at that side while I manage, and we'll write a joint venture agreement with the lawyers behind it. But again, if that's not the case, we always find workarounds to make it work. Again, I'll go back to that same point. If you're down to do business with me, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, you figure out a way.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Do you charge a property management fee or asset management fee? Or that's all going to be your sweat equity to the property?
I'll underwrite the deal with property management in there, but that won't come to me directly. So I'll explain to them how we manage the property internally and say, hey, let's say we allocate 4%. That's just coming straight out of the numbers so they can see it on the pro forma. But anytime we do like any sort of inspection or call that we need, we're just going to take that off the expenses on a monthly basis and have that impact our cash flow. But there's no asset or property management fee that I'm getting on the side.
I think you should build that in.
So the reason why I haven't, and I've went through this a lot, is because I'm taking the cash flow 50-50 up front, because a lot of investors want all their money back first, but I'm still taking 50% of the cash flow from day one. Therefore, if there's any sort of if we have a really intense month property management, there's probably not going to be a lot of cash flow, and that's coming out for both of us. So I found it works better. Again, things change all the time.
So basically you don't charge the passive monthly fee, but you charge in the expenses as a result of your actions. So so any decisions you have to make that are paid for, those are paid for. And very often, okay, I understand. Have you ever partnered with anybody who's like a contractor or somebody who brings in that kind of sweat equity?
I haven't. And just because I don't think those skills are complementary to mine in a partnership, because I have good relationships with my contractors. I like it. So, to bring a contractor in, are we adding value to each other in the same way? So I haven't seen an opportunity for that to make sense. I even asked my contractors if that's something no, we want no part of that.
Actually, it's a good idea not to muddy those waters.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I'm saying. They're like, yeah, we like what we're doing here. Like we do the renovations and repairs. You pay us. Like I love to work with you, but once you get into a property, it's a different relationship. So I just haven't seen it work with a contractor, but the people that I am working with, I think we're making some good strides.
A lot of people who are getting into real estate or want to scale up their portfolio, one of the obstacles they're finding is that financing option, right? Where you already addressed it. Where in Timmins, it's sub 500,000, so you can even put less than 20% down, right? Or are you putting less than 20% down on some of those?
I'm not. Again, we can get in the weeds there. Whether we're doing 5%, depending on owner occupied, you can get in some little stuff. Most of the stuff I do is either going to be 20% down, but we're going to burr it. Or 25% down if we're doing a commercial deal as well.
A lot of people are wondering, how do they bridge into it? Because you have a day job, right? Okay, so in that, basically, people are trying to figure out, how do I get out of my day job and go into real estate full time? Because you need the mortgage. In order to qualify for the mortgage, you need to have an income and you need to eat too. Because when you're investing in properties, very often you're a little cash poor, right? Until you get to burr it or do whatever it is you're doing, and even then, you're taking the money, put it in another property, not necessarily feed yourself. So you need the cash flow,
100%.
right? So how do you balance or bridge out from a job going into real estate?
I can give my experience. Again, my experience may not be as everyone's, but this is kind of how I was thinking about it. When I really started getting serious real estate investing, I was working with the Toronto Police Service as a police officer. That's an intense job. The work is intense itself, but just the way I was doing it, the commute was killing me. Some days it was like 2 hours one way. And then you're there, 10 to 12 hour shift, and you're not just picking your nose as much as the public might think. Like we are doing a little bit of work there, but it was just intense. And I was trying to invest on the side, doing calls, analyze deals. It was a lot. You're working days and nights, and it's crazy, but it's a full-time job, and there's no part-time options. So I wasn't seeing the scalability there. Don't get me wrong, the income was great to support a lot of things, but for how I saw my business, it wasn't working. I was able to transition to a job still with the government as a 911 dispatcher, which gave me a whole lot more flexibility. It's a per hour job, and I'm a permanent part-time employee. So I can work 50 hours a week, or you can work 5 hours a week. And being that gave me the scalability. Right now, we're working anywhere between 30 and 40 hours to put food on the table and kind of offset some of the costs for the business. But this gives me the very easy ability to scale back. Next month we go to 30 hours, but 6 months we go to 20 hours. And hopefully by the end of 2023, I'm at 10 to 15 hours just taking care of the nitty gritty there. I feel like, the media tells you, be a real estate investor, quit your job. All 9 to 5 suck. I'm like, time out. Whoa. I think that the 9 to 5s definitely have their place, but maybe working into a position where you can slowly remove yourself. You don't have to have a job and then not have a job. You can have a job, then maybe have a less intense job, then maybe have less hours at a job and slowly pull your way out for that. Again, if I was making, $50,000 cash flow a month, I wouldn't have a job. But, as the business grows, I'm sure we'll get there. And this gives me an opportunity to do that with a little less leverage and, always food on the table.
Yeah, the idea of real estate investing is so that you have an option. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be this way or that way.
Yeah.
So I think you like that. That's correct.
Has weaning back the hours that you're doing with your day job, has that affected your ability to qualify for mortgages, or is there a stress point there?
I think so. But at this point, I'm pretty tapped out for mortgages regardless.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something else that I think individuals should do. And again, I'm not saying, oh, I know everything about real estate investing, but and I'm sure we all know, there's a little bit of work that happens here, whether it's like actually looking to find those deals or putting income on the table so that you can get there. Once you get a couple mortgages, you understand that, okay, my personal income doesn't matter that much as the properties that I'm looking for start to qualify more. And I'm getting to that point now where it makes more sense for me to look for bigger deals, look for better opportunities real estate wise, and not rely so much on my income. But 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. So I was doubling down on the income, working those overtime shifts, really filling up that bank. But now it's more onto the real estate side. And as long as you transition, like businesses, it's got to be a little bit fluid. And how my business and my personal life's going, this just makes a little bit more sense for me right now.
You even mentioned that you have an 8-unit going on, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that one will obviously be very performance-based, where your income isn't the biggest factor here. So, again, it sounds like there is a natural progression. I mean, generally, we've interviewed people. Everybody has a flow or a process or a journey that they went that has similarities. It's very much like Monopoly. You buy the greenhouses, and then you upgrade to the red houses.
Boom.
Because, as you start to wean back your job, you can't buy the greenhouses anymore. You can only buy the red houses. Right? I think that's where you're at right now, and that's why the partnerships are the natural transition as part of your growth process.
We're seeing that you're super active on social media. You're giving a lot of tips, a lot of value as to essentially your viewers. How do you find that impact your business?
I think it's been great. I've always liked social media, but I was consuming a lot of content before actually creating it. I think I'm one of the lucky ones. I have no problem being in front of a camera. Like anytime, I probably like it more than I should. So it's no problem to me. Like, oh, you mean I can make videos and people are gonna watch them, and I can continue doing it, and people aren't gonna call me weird? Because in high school, it was weird. Like you couldn't just be making videos on Instagram and like everyone be like, who's this weird guy? But now, like, I have something I'm passionate about. I'm actually adding real value to people. So for me, it's no problem. Like I'll go out, make, 10, 15 videos in a day and I enjoy it, which is
10, 15.
A lot of people think it's like very time intensive. It's not, especially for like Instagram, like shorter social media. Man, it's maybe 2 hours a month. You make all your content, cut it up, and you put it out for the month. Like it can be that easy. I like to put a
We're
little
doing
bit
something wrong for
Yeah,
sure.
we gotta spend some time with you,
100%,
right?
Yeah,
I mean-
like I've worked with a couple of people. I'm like, yeah, like you're spending way too much time on this. 2 hours a month, you can easily get 3 posts a week. I spend a little bit more time because I'm looking to get a little bit more out of my content there. But yeah, just setting, again, another system. We're setting up systems like how do we batch create content? How do we cut it up and then get it out to the viewers as easy and as effective as possible? But in terms of the impact, I think it's really helped. Like people see like, oh, Isaiah's like, it's not a splash in a pan. He's not like, doing all this, trying to like get all this money and then run away to Bahamas. Like, no, I tell people, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Like I got like 200 plus videos on Instagram. There's stuff on YouTube you can watch, all over Facebook. Like go find me. Like I'm out here. I'm not going anywhere. So I feel 1, it builds a level of trust. And 2, I feel like it gives you a little bit more credibility when you're out there. And I think my book has helped as well. I wrote a book. It's called The Rookie Real Estate Investor. It's a free book, just giving the basic fundamentals of real estate investing to get started. And a lot of people have had really good feedback on that. So people have been able to take that off social media and use that.
Did you have any coaches coaching you through a whole thing? Because you obviously have a great system in place for pretty much everything you do. Is that literally just from your experience in work, or did you actually have a coach to teach you how to structure everything?
No, 100%. Like I've definitely put some time into like mentorship. So I'm in one program right now. I've had another course before. And then I think as soon as this one wraps up, I'll be in another one. Yeah. So I feel sometimes people just want to keep course hopping. Like any course or any the coaching program you want to get into. I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think you should, maybe take us where you are. Like you don't need to spend $25K on a course when you have 0 doors. That makes no sense to me. Maybe that's 3 books and a couple phone calls with some people. That might get you to your first one, but then you're going to hit another sticking point, and then you go look for that education that solves that sticking point. Once you're past that sticking point and onto a next one, then you kind of leverage from there. And that was kind of my thing. My first thing, I didn't know how to analyze a deal. So that's the coaching that I got to like understand how to like underwrite deals. Then I didn't know how to grow a business. So the coaching program I did really showed me how to grow a business, operate a business. Now I'm looking to how do I effectively raise capital and service my investment partners better. So that's the kind of coaching and mentorship I'm in there. And eventually, I'm sure I'll get another hiccup or another challenge, and then I'll seek out mentorship or coaching for that as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it like that too, because yesterday Ping and I were talking about if you cannot identify the problem you're facing specifically and it's a little too conceptual, it can be that whatever coaching you're getting is going to be a little bit too either fundamental or too advanced to solve the problem that you're actually facing right now. So it's good when people are actually doing a little bit of something, then they can get some coaching that will actually solve their specific problem because you know what you're trying to solve.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And I feel that's a huge thing because I'm looking at people in some of the programs that I've been in, and I'm like, this is not your problem. Like your problem lies way behind, or you're way past this. Like you're wasting time here. And just like you said, identifying that problem where you are and being okay, where do I need to go find resources? Because sometimes it could be as simple as a book. Like you don't know how to write a rental ad. You don't need, a $10,000 coaching program to write a rental ad. That's a couple YouTube videos and a book. But knowing that, you know how to, kind of best react for that. So I think you made a great point there.
Yeah. Does social media have a selfish question?
Yeah.
Do you edit your own videos?
Do I edit my own videos?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people are actually doing this stuff and they can't let go of that aspect because so many people, and you can see sometimes people are so big on social media and you kind of wonder if they're actually doing what they say they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because, there's a lot of fallacies, people who are selling the fallacies. And you can tell when people are actually doing it and sometimes people who are not. But some people spend so much time on it. I sometimes wonder, I'm just like, when are you doing any of the real estate stuff that you say you're doing?
Exactly. I never wanted it to get to a point where I'm doing social media because I see some of these coaches or some of these programs out there or even these real estate gurus. I'm like, when's the last time you transacted? You talk about this off market. When's the last time you pulled an off market deal? Like, do you call sellers? Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm taking a break. What do you mean? Like, that's not what I'm here. So, like, I never wanted to get a point where I'm actually out of the game. So, my content is always to supplement what I'm doing. Your social media is a direct relation of what you're doing. So, if your social media sucks, it's because you're not doing anything cool. But, I continue to put myself in opportunities where I get to do cool stuff. Therefore, my social media looks nice because I get to, showcase some of that cool stuff. So if your social media is boring, just get out there and do some more cool stuff, and I guarantee you it'll grow.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that the content creation is supposed to be a documentation of your life.
Yeah.
You shouldn't try to create, just document what you did last week.
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
The truth is, like, if you were to do, let's say, a video of like an everyday investor, honestly, it's not always going to be very entertaining. It's a lot of editing. If we had this guy following us around with a camera all day, he'd watch 10 hours of videos to edit. It ends up being a lot. So I find that there is a balance of having to be a little intentional. For example, even what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's a very easy way to share a wide array of knowledge and experiences, right? And it's intentional,
Yes.
right? But that's the thing is that sometimes when we try to showcase things, we tried that. We tried, going to places where there were problems, right?
Yeah.
And deal with it. Or even when we're house hunting, like how many properties do you have to look for?
Yeah.
In order to, and how do you showcase that, right?
Very true.
I find that there's a balance on it, but I think it really has to do with that personality you have. You have, I think, a personality
I
that you
appreciate
get on camera. When you say what you have to say about real estate, I'm sure it's a vibe in itself.
Yeah,
right?
I appreciate that. But like
Yeah.
going back to that, like that's exactly how I come up with my content. Like I got my running notes in my phone. I'll have so we're making content for December now. So I got about 400 ideas. I'll record maybe 50 of them and probably only 10 of them will actually get edited and come out. But it's very similar stuff. Like we'll do property walkthroughs and I have all this content. I'm like, this is boring. What can I do to be edutaining? Like, what is edutaining about this? I guarantee you went through that walkthrough and you two had some off-camera stories or jokes. If you're able to take those in a tasteful way, put them out there, that's the content people want to see. There's definitely a little bit of work there. Maybe I shouldn't say it's like so easy, but just being able to think about, okay, what are we doing that's maybe mundane and how can I present this in a way to my audience that's a little bit more educating? I love that part. So for me, that's a little bit of fun. But again, I never want to get away from actually being in the game, doing the actual business.
I personally really love the balance that you have between being an investor and actually controlling your assets, because a lot of people, they talk about just being able to find the team to relinquish control, but you don't do that. You actually control the situation and plug the team in, which I think is a very good approach. A lot of people will be able to relate to wanting to do something like this because letting go completely, it's scary.
Yeah.
And people get burned for it. And you obviously had some bad experiences with it in the beginning, which is why you're doing what you're doing. So I think this is very insightful. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? Is it Instagram, email? How do you prefer?
Instagram is where like I'm most active. So it's it's Mr. Henry. So ITS Mr. Henry. All my content's up there. I repurpose it to YouTube as well. So you can go find it on YouTube at First Position Real Estate. But yeah, Instagram's going to be the best. From there, you can grab a copy of my ebook. It's called The Rookie Real Estate Investor. Just go grab it out of the bio there. No problems there. You can also get me an email as well. But yeah, find me on Instagram and I slide into those DMs. I want to talk.